Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your boy J-Rock. Today I'm gonna be hitting you with another comic book review. Today we're gonna be reviewing something from the Valiant universe. Now, this is gonna be RAI, the 2019 series, not to be confused with the 2012 or the one back in the 90s. So, this is written by Dan Abnet. He wrote RAI back in the 90s, so it's gonna be interesting to see what he does with the character now in the new interpretation of the character in the 2000s. And the artwork is by Juan Jose Rip. Now, his art style is an acquired taste. It's not for everybody. A lot of people hate it. A lot of people love it. And you know what I think? In this particular moment, it's important to also bring up the colorist. The colorist is Andrew Dahlhaus. Now, I'm a big fan of his colors, and I'm not the biggest fan of Juan Jose Rip. I don't hate his art, but I find it to sometimes be overly detailed and overly gory. And with this colorist, I think he really helps the art look more polished, more clean, not as crazy and not as wild as it does when other colorists are working on Juan Jose Rip's pencils. For those of you not familiar with the Valiant universe, or maybe just not familiar with the character of Rai, I'm gonna give you a quick recap of who he is and what his thing is. So he's like a cyborg kind of, right? But he has artificial intelligence, kind of like Terminator. And he's from the future. He's from 41st century, from New Japan. Now, New Japan is above Earth in its own little island that floats. And he's working for the government of Japan. And this whole time he thinks he's a hero helping out the people. But little does he know, Japan's government is all fucked up. They're actually not good. They're kind of bad. Uh, Kind of try to control people and oppress people. So yeah, even in the 41st century, their politics and their government still all fucked up. So he's unaware of this. He doesn't know that the people, the civilians, they actually all hate him because they don't see him as a good guy. They see him as a villain. So since he's artificial intelligence, he starts evolving, and he starts being self-aware of what he's doing. He's like, hey, he starts questioning the government. Like, I am working for the government, but we're not actually good because I'm actually the villain. People hate me, right? So he turns on the government and he starts helping the people. He's for the people, right? So yeah, kudos to Rai. Now these rebels that he always thought were villains against the government and so forth, now he helps them. He sees them as good guys that are against the bad guy being the government. And then this government is run by artificial intelligence, this tech named Father. So that's basically what you need to know before you come into this. Okay, now let's get into the volume 1 right here itself. So you guys will kind of read along with me. I'll tell the story to you guys. Once we're done, we'll go to the final thoughts and kind of what I thought about it and so forth. This story starts off with Raijin. He's like a little Rai. He's like a son of Rai, but you know he's a robot, so he can't actually be a son. Well, they're doing this a lot in stories for like maybe the last 5 years. I've been seeing this a lot where Superman has a son, Batman has a son. Even in The Mandalorian, he has little Yoda. Everybody has a baby sidekick or a little kid sidekick nowadays because, you know, they're all trying to use that lone wolf and cub recipe because it kind of became a trend. So Rise no different. Dan Abnet decided to use that trope as he develops his story. So here, little Raijin, they're in Sonora. So he's being ambushed by a bunch of the locals because whatever reason they don't want outsiders coming in because this is like a post-apocalyptic world. Because where we last left off, right, kind of spoilers here for the other volume, the previous volumes. He destroyed New Japan, the Japan that was an island flying on space, right? When he destroyed it, it landed on Earth. So our Earth is all like a post-apocalyptic waste and stuff. Think of the movie Road Warrior. Everybody has their zones and their areas. They've all got like little cliques and little gangs, right? And different. Everybody has their own areas they control. So they don't want them intruding. Little Rai, they don't know he's a robot. They think he's a little boy. He has superpowers. He just smashes on all of them. While little Raijin was taking care of all this, Rai was fixing a truck because it broke down. But all these locals that wanted to ambush little Raijin, they came in vehicles and they all left on foot after this fight, right? So all kinds of spare cars around. Rai's like, hey, we don't need to fix the car anymore. We just hop on one of these. So they use one of those cars to get to where they're going. And they're at this bar, and little Raijin and the bartender are talking, and little Raijin's he's basically giving you, through the bartender and him, through their conversation, he's explaining to us what the story is gonna be. They're looking for father. Turns out they didn't completely kill him, and there's 12 pieces of him around, different AI, and if all 12, they're kind of like copycats, if you will. If all 12 get together, they could revive father. So they gotta get rid of these pieces before they all link up and recreate them. He's telling the bartender that that's what their mission is. The bartender's like, okay, that's interesting. As this happens, the locals come back. And they come back in all kinds of vehicles. And once he takes care of them, they go take a break, take a nap somewhere, right? And it turns out he's sleeping somewhere. And while he's asleep, he's having dreams of this other Rai named Momo. So Rai has an alternative reason to do all this. It's not just to save the world. He has another plan. Once he saves the world, he wants to meet up with this Momo, this other Rai, human life. He doesn't want to be this just artificial intelligent warrior, right? He wants to just stop being a warrior and wants to live a normal life like humans do. While Rai is in dreamland resting, little Raijin is just thinking to himself, like he had this conversation with the bartender, and the plan was after they save the world, Rai is gonna try to become a human. He's trying to learn to be a human, learn to adapt. His AI is evolving, and he's telling little Raijin, we're gonna dispose of you once the mission's over. So Raijin's just thinking because the bartender told him, why should you be destroyed and he get to live a human life? And now he's thinking, yeah, why shouldn't I get to live a human life? So now he's getting kind of like overthinking this, and he's like, yeah, like that's not right, this and that, and Rai tries to explain to him, well, it's because you're not as evolved as me. You're Rice is a more advanced model, right? So he could evolve, the kid can't, and he's like, no, that's not right. And the kids kind of starting to have disagreements with him. So it's kind of like a relationship with father and son, and sometimes they disagree. You're telling your kid what to do. Sometimes you gotta start yelling at him, like, because I said so. That's why, right? So sometimes you gotta act that way, and that's kind of how Rai is acting with little Raijin here. So as Raijin is thinking about all this, his senses go off because he's kind of like a homing device. He could sense when the other offsprings of father are close by. So he senses that there's a piece close by. There's 12 of them, right? So he's like, hey, there's one close by. He wakes up Rai, and they start walking around in this ghost town. And Rai is trying to explain to him because he's like, yeah, I don't see ghosts here. He's telling him, no, ghost town means, that it's an empty town. There's nobody around. And as he's explaining stuff to him, like, we're getting to see how Rai is kind of becoming more human. And we find this house. So they go in this house, and we have these cyborgs. They're all named Lucy, right? These AI were created to take care of a family, like to cook for kids, to clean the house, kind of like maids, right? But I guess obviously something went down where this house is empty. So what they were created for, there's no people there, so they serve no function. So when Rai and little Raijin show up, they're excited to like, oh, let me make you tea, let me clean for you, sit down. They're excited to do their job, right? Because for years they've just been sitting there. Now it turns out one of the offsprings of father, he corrupted the system, so he's in the robots, right? So a fight pops off with all these maids. They're all fighting, but they're not really fighting the maids. They're fighting basically one of the offsprings of father. While this whole fight is happening in the house, they finally find the AI that is one of the offspring. Rai destroys it. It made for a very interesting villain here that they're fighting, because now you kind of get an idea of how how you're gonna fight each villain. This was not at all what I was expecting. A bunch of artificial maids and whatnot. That was out of left field for me. So it brought an interesting twist. So once he destroys the AI, he leaves the maids. And little Raijin saying, we could just reprogram them to come back to life because now they just shut down. He says, no, I just leave them. It'd be cool to have them on, but serving no function because there's no humans in that house. So they leave them. And as they're leaving, Rai himself has some type of mechanical shutdown. So he just has like a seizure and falls. And little Raijin's like, man, like I gotta wake him up. So as he's trying to wake him up, this big ass T-Rex is coming about to eat Rai. So Raijin, he has a few tricks up his sleeve, right? He has a few powers that we're not quite aware of yet. And he sends out this like sonic signal to scare the T-Rex away. But he still can't figure out how to wake up Rai. He's like, what the hell? How do I wake him up? So we got these henchmen looking for Rai as well. They're hot on his trail. The main one here is called Razor. They're like stormtroopers. And I guess this guy named the Red King, he sent them. He's one of father's offsprings. He sent them to look for all the other offsprings. So now they knew there was going to be one in that house, but they got there too late because Rai got there first and already destroyed it. So they know someone got there first and they believe it's Raijin, because they know Raijin, the little boy, he can track down all the offsprings. So that's why they want him. They're looking for him too, so that he can help them track the rest of the pieces. So they're looking for him, and it seems this guy Razor has found them. Now he found them while he's still passed out and incapacitated. And little Raijin's just trying to wake him up. So while Rai is in dreamland, we find out Lula hacked his programming. Now Lula is one of the original rebels back in the on New Japan. She's in the first volumes and so forth. So it was cool to see her back. She's trying to make contact with him. So we're just here letting the reader know she's still around. She's just, they're still around. And she's telling him, how come you haven't tried to contact us? He goes, I can't because if I turn down my systems, because if I leave them on for you guys to contact me or for me to contact you guys, the Red King can find where I'm at. As he's explaining this to her, bam, this weird bug shows up. It's one of the Red King's artificial AIs that travels through technology and dreams and wires and whatnot, right? As Rai wakes up, we see back in the real world, out of dreamland, little Raijin was dealing with this guy Razor that the Red King sent, right? And as little Raijin's dealing with him, he sent the same signal he sent for that T-Rex to leave. The same sonic signal is the same one he sent for the T-Rex to come back. And that T-Rex just tears that guy Razor apart. When this happens, you see the Red King, he's overlooking everything. And he's like, shit, like my guy's down, so I'm gonna need to send some more men. So that was an awesome scene and a great issue. We got introduced to the Red King for the first time. We get to see how he looks. And then we got a badass T-Rex moment, which Juan Jose rips art. It's like with this T-Rex, all that blood flying around. He's great at gory moments like this, those type of scenes. That's where his art really shines in my experience, because he likes to really over exaggerate things and make them real extreme. So now we get to the next issue, and little Raijin and Rai are leaving, and they're looking for the next offspring, right? So now the next one, it turns out they're going to this little farm because that's where the signal's coming from. When they go to this little farm, everybody hears, they're growing vegetables, flowers. This is an important job to rebuild, right? So he's talking to the main farmer or owner there. He's telling them the story, how they need to look for father, and it's in one of these machines because he runs through technology, right? So the owner of this farm, she's talking to Rai, and she's saying, you think I don't know who you are? You think us people here on Earth are ignorant and we don't know about technology and so forth? We may not be as advanced as you, because we know you come from New Japan out in space. She goes, but we know enough. She goes, we know you're the freaking idiot that dropped that whole planet of New Japan onto Earth and made Earth what it is now. So you're no hero, you're just a dumbass, right? Like, she's not feeling him. She's thinking like he's the one that ruined Earth and made it all like post-apocalyptic. And as they're talking, so I was like, oh shit, like Eternal Warriors here. Turns out he's their protector, right? Like, he's their protector there on Earth. And he says, I hate to be the guy to tell you this. He goes, but you're not welcome here. You gotta leave. And Rai's like, hey, Eternal Warrior, what are you doing here? Right? And turns out while she was arguing with him, she was buying time, because she had already called them. She had called them and she was buying time, arguing with him to give him time to show up. And he says, I can't let you just destroy their machines to look for this virus, basically, right? And he's telling them, I need to find it, because or else it'll repair itself and old father will come back and make things worse. Now we get to know a little bit about Eternal Warrior. So I found this conversation interesting between the two, because Rai is like, all about tech and AI and electronics, and Eternal Warrior, he's all about earth and soil and the planet, right? So their powers are two completely different things. One is like our bare necessities, and one is like the super advanced future stuff. So they're like the complete opposites of each other, and their way of thinking is completely different from each other. So I like the conversation that we're having. Turns out Eternal Warrior also has a new sidekick, like a teenage daughter, if you will, teenage sidekick, and he has a little boy, Raijin, right? So it's like, hey, they're both dads now, right? And they're having this conversation about kids, basically about sidekicks. So the way Eternal Warrior raises his or puts his sidekick up on game, right, is a lot more what would be considered politically correct. It's like, look, you do this way. No, you did this wrong. He's more patient with his sidekick. And Rai's a lot more stern, more serious, more verbally aggressive with his. And Eternal Warrior's telling him, you ever think that's not the right thing to do? You're treating him like a fucking animal, right? They're having basically a disagreement on how to raise children. And here it's a little gets a little complicated. They get into an intense argument. So we jump to the next scene where he's telling the Raijin, find the offspring here on this machine. He goes, but if I find the offspring on this machine to find this virus, it's gonna shut down the machine. And this is the machine they use to improve the soil, and the soil improves the plants and the vegetables and fruits and so forth. So it's gonna throw everything out of whack. He says priority number one is kill the threat. Priority number two is to rebuild. So worry about priority number one. And he starts yelling at me. He goes, but I don't want to do that because it's gonna this. And he says, I said fucking do it. So he's yelling at him. As he's yelling at him, little Raijin decides, okay, so he starts working on the project to get rid of the virus. And Eternal Warrior just smashes on him. He just lets Rai have it. So here we have the adults fighting over the children, right? Over how the children should be raised. Except, it's comics, so we have to have an actual physical fight. They're fighting, they're going at it. And while they're fighting, the real threat, being the villains, show up. And man, shit gets brutal. Things it's super action packed right here. If you like Conan comics, you'll love a lot of the stuff going down here. A lot of decapitations, because these villains, they could kind of like heal themselves. So Rai says these guys heal themselves, so you gotta go for a hard kill, meaning you gotta chop off the head, chop them in half, like, you gotta make sure they ain't gonna put themselves back together. So they're letting these villains have it, and the villains are just as brutal. They're killing a lot of these the good guys in very gruesome ways, because I know Juan Jose Rip just got off on this art right here. He got off on this scenes. He was just going crazy doing his thing. So while all this is happening, Raijin has to he has to keep searching for that virus. While he's searching for the virus, the girl, I forget her name, she's the sidekick of Eternal Warrior. She can control Earth and stuff like that. So Raijin says, can you bring a static electricity, like thunder and stuff like that? She goes, yes. And he goes, a lot of these guys are wearing mechanical suits. So if you bring that thunder down, those mechanical suits shut down. Without the suits, they're just regular humans. So she just lets it rain. And once she does that, all of them are basically useless. The story arc kind of ends there. We're trying to figure out what to do with these people once they're no longer a threat. They don't have the suit on. Turns out they were brainwashed. They were being evil against their will. So Rai says they're no longer a threat. They're no longer brainwashed. Let them go. And now they have another argument. Eternal Warrior. He's a warrior. He's been a barbarian all his life. So he's like, nah, man, we gotta kill them, because what's to say they won't get brainwashed again, or they won't do this again, right? Once they get the armor back. And they have a little debate about this, and he says, like, it'd be cruel to still punish them once the war's over with. So they decide to let them go. That's the end of the issue. And what do I think about this issue? I think I love Dan Abnet's writing. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Dan Abnet. Anytime you see something with his name on it, don't hesitate to pick it up, give it a try. That's the first thing I'm gonna say. This was a great story, and it's a lot about father-son relationships. And all fathers have different personalities, and all kids have different personalities. So it gets tricky, especially it's like to me, it's hard to tell somebody else how to raise their kids. Your approach might not be their style, right? And it's hard to accept when somebody else is trying to tell you how to raise yours. You could be offended, like stay out of my business type of thing. Like and even within your own kids, say you have two, three kids, the same you're gonna use the same technique, you have the same personality towards all of them. What resonates with one might not resonate with the other. You know what I mean? So you gotta kind of read them because they all got different personalities themselves. And this touches as like one thinks his way is right, the other one thinks his way is right, and that can be a tricky thing. So here at the end of the story, we found Rai asking himself, like, am I human for being strict on Raijin and treating them a certain way? Or because I'm so strict, am I not human and am I still just a robot basically? That's kind of where that issue had ended, and it ended on a interesting note. The other thing we were talking about here was technology. We're talking about technology. When is technology too advanced? If it's too much, what does it leave for us humans to do? If technology is gonna do everything for us, right? So technology, while it's good, it can be bad because it can teach us to be. It could hinder us, if you will. Like I'm gonna give you just a vague example. When I was growing up, I could remember 400 freaking phone numbers of all my friends, and yeah, I had a lot of friends because I live where I live right now is like 1,000 apartments, so you know a lot of people, right? Now I can't remember 10 because they're all saved on my phone, and I just go to the name and click on it. So see, while the technology is good, it does that for you, it does the thinking for you. At the same time, it's bad because it does the thinking for you. You know what I mean? A lot of it has to do with the times that we rely on technology so much. If I ask the kids about what's your friend's phone number? What's your parents' phone number? They won't know it by memory. I remember knowing. My brain was a phone book, right? Because you had to know everything by memory. You didn't walk around writing everything down. Uh, so it hints at those questions. At the beginning of the story, when we got introduced to Raijin, I was worried if was he gonna be just a plot device, like a robot that just tells you where the next villain's at, right? But now we gave this character some personality. So while at the same time you're like, well, it's a robot, it wasn't supposed to have personality. I like that we took the route of making him a character and giving him a personality. And you see Rai being a lot more humanized here. Rai to me is my favorite character. His title is my favorite title in the Valiant universe. But the character itself didn't have much personality. He was just a robot doing what he's told to. Here, Dan Abnet definitely took more of he's trying to humanize him. He's giving him a personality, which I enjoy. It gives, but at the same time it takes away because now he's no longer Rai like this robot. He's like feeling like a different character. He's evolving, which is not necessarily a bad thing though, because now he's becoming like a human, right? And which is his goal. He wants to be a human person. So this story, it has a lot of moving pieces, has a lot of depth to it. I feel like this story could go on for a good while. I hope Dan Abnett stays on it for a good while because it seems like he has a lot of story to tell. Hope it's not one of those 10, 12 issue things. He could be on here for a minute. And I really would want him to. This could be biased because I'm a big fan of the title. But I would say I would recommend everybody to pick this up and read it. If you ain't reading it, I don't know why. I don't know why. You gotta give some of these Valiant books a chance. Some of them are really well written. Um, the first ride, it's a lot different than this ride. It's the same ride, but I mean the stories themselves. Because the other one didn't have personality. You got all that through the other characters. But you always got a solid story. And here's no different. Here you got a solid story, but now you get some character development going. Which can be tricky because he is, an AI. So I know how that can be hard to give it a personality because it could completely ruin what the character is or what the initial idea was. Alright, my people, it's been fun, but I think we got to another road on this one. I think that's about all I got to say about this volume. Can't wait to read the next one and drop a review on that as well. So for now, I just hope you hit that like button, and I'll check you guys out next time.